This little elephant right here is actually a wingfoil hook that I designed myself. I'm still pretty new to foiling, I covered that in my last video, but one thing I quickly realized is that foiling in winter destroys your arms. The cold temperatures make your muscles cramp up way faster, and the thick wetsuit and gloves don't help either. A lot of wingfoilers online swear by using a harness in winter to stay out longer, so I figured I'd give it a shot. But I didn't want to buy a full harness setup, because I think it's a bit too bulky for traveling, and instead I wanted a hook that I could attach directly to my iron impact vest. The problem was I couldn't find one that fit, since the strap on this vest is really narrow and the buckle cannot be removed. So I decided to make my own. I used Plasticity, a relatively new CHD software that feels a bit like Blender, which I normally use for 3D modeling. My first prototype took about 2.5 hours to print on my Anchormake M5C, and I designed the hook to hold an M4 screw and M4 nut for attaching it to the belt. For the material I went with TPU because it's flexible, so it won't break the board when I'm lying on it. For the first test I tied a thin rope to the handles of my north wings and headed to my home spot, which is the Wannsee in Berlin.
Jetzt schon erschöpft.
The session started a bit rough because there was barely any wind and I struggled just to get out of the water. My first attempts to hook in, also a total fail. The hook was way too small and the rope was too flimsy and too soft. But then I tried hooking in while taxiing, and after a few tries it actually worked. Later in the session the wind picked up again and I finally got to test it while flying. Until the hook came loose, and yeah, that was the end of the test for that day. Back home I made a reinforced version since the first one was a bit too soft, and yeah, the second version was way better. And after testing it again, I ordered 75 cm harness lines, which are much stiffer and easier to attach than the thin rope I used before. I was really hoping to test the new setup with my Takoon Escape Air on a trip to Barcelona, but the waves were a nightmare for me and I had to spend most of my time practicing the rodeo start, and yeah, there was only one windy day, so I had no chance to test the hook again. My next short session was in Denmark at 0 degrees Celsius air temperature and 2 degrees water temperature, so it was absolutely freezing. But yeah, the Escape Air felt super amazing, super light, and it starts gliding so quickly in light wind, it's magic. However, hooking into the new harness lines wasn't quite as smooth as I hoped it, since they bent a little bit, but after 2 tries I got the hang of it, and yeah, it worked pretty good. Oh, and there's also a good tip for cold weather sessions. Just pour hot water into your gloves and booties before heading out, and it will keep you warm for about 30 to 45 minutes. But yeah, I skipped working on my jibes that day just for safety reasons, and I will save that for warmer days, I think. Back at home I made a slightly longer version of the hook to make it even easier to hook in, and yeah, I wasn't quite happy with the result, so I made adjustments and printed it again. The screw system is very handy in my opinion, as you can choose whether the hook moves along the belt or stays fixed. So this is the final version, and you can print it yourself in 2 different widths, so it should fit most belts.